Okay, so I'm going over section 3.2, which is linear equations in two variables. This should be somewhat helpful for the assignment because you're given an equation in two variables and you're basically finding the missing ordered pair.
Okay.
So 3.2 is the definition of a linear equation in two variables, graphing linear equations in two variables by plotting points, x and y intercepts, and then horizontal and vertical lines.
Okay.
So I'm going to just, excuse me, let me drink some water.
Okay.
All right. So a linear equation is in two variables. So a linear equation, we call it linear because it creates a line when you graph it. So if you have a graph that is linear, so that's where we get linear.
Okay.
I'm trying to draw and it's not letting me draw. I don't know why. Okay. Going to the word line. It's not right now. So an equation that is linear is written in the form ax plus by. Oh, there's my highlights. All of a sudden they just randomly showed up. Ax plus by equals c. So there's an x variable, a y variable, and neither of these variables have exponents on them. So that's
Okay.
what makes them linear.
Oh, okay. Because it doesn't have exponents?
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, linear doesn't do exponents, and then there's other types where they do have exponents.
Okay.
And then we also call that form the standard form of a line, where all of your variables are on one side and then your number is on the other side.
Okay.
There are additional forms of a line, and those are slope-intercept form and point-slope form, and those are talked about in later sections.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with an example of just graphing by plotting points. So complete the table and graph the corresponding ordered pairs, and then draw the line defined by the points, all solutions to the equation. So our equation is negative 3x plus 6y equals 9. So that is our equation. And then we're given it with values already. So this is where we are connecting to the assignment. So this first row of the table, x is. So I don't know x, but I know that y is 0. So this would be like if you're given an ordered pair, x comma 0, you need to find out what x is.
Okay.
So that's going to look like how it's shown on the assignment. The second row, we don't know x, but we know that y is 2. So that's the second value in the ordered pair.
Let me see. Okay. Said that. Say that again.
So the second row, we don't know x, it's blank, but we know y. And y is always the second value in the ordered pair. So that's why we have x in the first one, because we don't know the number for x. But we know the value for y, and so that's 2. So that's going to be the second number.
Okay.
And then our third row, we're given x. They're giving us that x is negative 7. So that means in the x spot I have negative 7, but I don't know y. So I'm going to just y, because I have a blank there.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
For -7, you have the y instead of an x, and the -7 is under x.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah, so the ordered pairs are always x comma y.
Oh, you're cutting out.
Oh, okay, I don't know why. Ordered pairs are always x comma y. So because we have a number in the x column, that means we can replace the value of x with that number, but we don't have a number in the y column for that row, so we don't know what y is, so it's going to stay as y.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
So for
Stephanie?
Yeah?
Your display isn't showing. It's showing an X over you. I can't see anything.
Are you seeing my screen?
No, I'm not. You're cutting
seeing
in and
anything.
out. You're
Okay.
cutting in and out, and now I can't see anything.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, it says that I think it might be on your end because it tells me that you're having a slower download speed than upload speed. So
Let me get out of the university.
yeah, maybe if you close some things, that might help.
Okay, there, I closed everything else.
Okay, so we'll see if that helps. So on our assignment, you're given an equation and you're trying to find the missing value in the ordered pair. So it's basically what we're going to be doing here to fill in the table is the same thing that you're going to do on the assignment. You just don't have a table, you're just doing this for one value.
Okay, and I might not be able to do this class because I can't see again.
That is
I'm
very
sorry. Sorry about that. There we go. I can see.
okay. Yeah, because on my end, like I can actually see it's not
Okay.
any connection problems.
It must be mine.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to work row by row to fill in the missing ordered pair, and then we're going to have 3 ordered pairs that we can use to graph. So I'm going to do this on the next slide, and I'm going to start with, we're given the ordered pair where we don't know x, but we know y. So we don't know x, but y is equal to 0. So that's that first row. And I'm going to rewrite our equation up here. Negative 3x plus 6y equals 9. So that's our equation.
Okay.
So we're given that y is equal to 0. So I'm going to replace y in our equation with 0. So I have negative 3x plus 6. And then instead of y, that's going to be times 0.
Okay.
Equals 9. And so now we're going to simplify that left side. So we're going to multiply 6 times 0, which is just 0, so that disappears. So if it's 0, we don't have to write it. So we have negative 3x equals 9. And so now we're solving for x. So we need to divide both sides by negative 3, since that's what's in front of the x.
Okay.
So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3, which gives me x. And then positive divided by negative is a negative, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we found that x is equal to 3. So our completed ordered pair is negative 3, comma 0.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go back to my previous slide, and I'm going to write in that number that we found so that we have that table completed. And then I'm going to graph that point. So that's negative 3 on the x, and then 0 on the y. So it's going to be right on the x-axis at negative 3. So now I'm going to repeat the process with the second row where we're given x, comma 2. So we don't know x, but we know y is 2.
Okay.
So in this case, y is 2, so I'm going to be replacing y with 2 in the equation. So I have negative 3x plus 6 times 2 equal to 9. So now I'm going to have to simplify the left side. So I need to multiply times 2 before I do anything else. So I have negative 3x plus 12 equals 9. So now I need to solve this for x, which means getting x by itself. So I need to get rid of the plus 12, and I do that by subtracting.
Okay.
So I get negative 3x equals, and then 9 minus 12 is negative 3.
Okay.
I divide both sides by negative 3 so that I can get x. So this gives me x is equal to 1. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. So our missing value is 1. So our ordered pair is 1, 2.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back and put that in on my table, and then I'm going to graph that. So I'm going to go to 1 on the horizontal axis and then 2 on the vertical, and that's my next point. Now we're going to repeat the process for the third one here, where in this case we're given x but not y. So we have negative 7, y. So in this case, x is equal to negative 7. So I'm going to be replacing x in our equation with negative 7. So it's going to be negative 3 times x. So that's going to be times negative 7 plus 6y equals 9. So I need to multiply the negative 3 times the negative 7. So that gives me a positive 21. So I have 21 plus 6y equals 9. Now I'm going to be solving for y. So I need to remove 21, which means I need to subtract 21 from both sides. So this gives me 6y equals, and then 9 minus 21 gives us a negative 12. So now I want y, so I need to divide both sides by 6, which is in front of the y. So I get y equals, and then negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. So this gives us our ordered pair of negative 7, negative 2.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go back to my table and put that back into the table and then graph that point. So I'm going to go to negative 7 on the x, and then I need to go down to negative 2 on the y. And now I have 3 points, so now I need to connect these with a line as best I can. I'm not very good at freehanding. Do my best.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So you connect all those, and if you're able to connect them with a line, that means you didn't make any mistakes. If one of the points is like nowhere close to the line, then that means you probably made a mistake somewhere and you
okay.
work.
Okay.
So that's why we do 3 points, because all 3 should be on a line, and if you can't make them connect to a straight line, that's an indication somewhere there's a mistake, but you don't know which point it is, so you would have to check all 3.
Okay.
So on the assignment, you don't have to graph, you don't have to have a table, you are just doing what we did on this slide, where you're just finding the missing ordered pair, the missing value.
Okay. All right.
Now my next example is basically going to be the same thing, but this time we're not given any values in the table. So if you're just told to graph something and you are not told any points, that means you can choose any points that you want. So you can choose any value. You can choose numbers for x or numbers for y. Most people choose numbers for x because it's just easier. And you want to make sure that you choose a negative number, 0, and a positive number. It's just good practice to choose kind of one of each so that you get a wide variety and you can make sure you're hitting everything. So I usually choose for x -1, 0, and 1. And I choose those numbers because -1 and 1 are really easy to multiply by. So it makes your work easier to work with. You want to try to make things as easy as possible on yourself.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to my next slide and rewrite the equation. We have y equals 5x plus 1. So I chose my first value, x equals -1. So I am going to replace x in my equation with -1. So I have y equals 5, and that's times x, so that's going to be times -1 plus 1. So now I'm going to multiply 5 times -1, so that's -5 plus 1. And then -5 plus 1 is -4. So I have y equals -4.
Okay.
So this gives our ordered pair as -1, -4, because it's always the x value first, the y value second.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back to my graph, and then I'm going to put my dot, and I'm going to fill this in my table, -1, -4.
Okay.
My next value here, I picked an x of 0. So now I'm going to repeat the process. And this is, once again, it's going to be a nice number to work with. So I have y equals 5. Then it's going to be times 0 plus 1. Now 5 times 0 is 0, so I'm just going to have y equals 1.
Okay.
So that gives me 0, 1 as my ordered pair.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back, put that on my table, and then graph that point. Now my last point is going to be x equals 1. So go back, x equals 1. So I'm going to plug that in. So I have y equals 5 times 1 plus 1. So 5 times 1 is 1. So that's, or 5 times 1 is 5, not 1. So 5 times 1, we got 5 plus 1, which then y equals 6. So this is why I chose -1, 0, and 1, because the math is really easy to do as long as you don't make mistakes. Should be easy to do.
Okay.
So that gives us 1, 6. So then I go back, put it on my table, graph that point, and then try to connect these. With a straight line, relatively straight line.
Right, gotcha.
You can always check your work by using Desmos. So in my introduction video that I made, I actually showed a little bit of Desmos, and I'm going to bring that up too. So here's Desmos. So you can check your work by, we're going to first put in our table. So I'm going to go to Add Item, and then I'm going to click Table. And then I just enter in my values. So my x was -1, and then I got a y of -4. And I had an x of 0, a y of 1, and then an x of 1, y of 6.
Okay.
I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see that. Okay, so now I've got 3 points, and then I'm going to type in the equation. And if we made no mistakes, it will go through all those 3 points.
Okay. Cool.
And so you can see it goes through. So that's another way to check your work, is for put in your table and then put in the equation, and then you can make sure that it's going through everything, especially if you're not very good at drawing things by hand. So.
Okay.
So next are intercepts are where our graph intersects or crosses one of the axes, either the horizontal or the vertical axis.
Okay.
And so those intercepts. So the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where it crosses the y.
Okay.
And to find these, if you're looking for the x-intercept, that's where y is equal to 0. If you're looking for the y-intercept, that's where x equals 0. So
okay.
That's like the tricky part, is that if you're looking for x, you plug in y, 0. You know, it's kind of like you're doing the opposite in a way.
Okay.
So we're going to find the intercepts of 5x plus 2y equals 5. So we will start with our x-intercept. And then I always write down that that means y equals 0. So that way I remember, okay, if I'm looking for x, it's the y that's 0. So it's just like what we've been doing. I'm going to be replacing y in our equation with 0 and then solving for x. So it's not really any different from what we're doing when we're graphing. We just have a specific number that we're looking for.
Okay.
So I have 5x plus 2 times 0, since it's 2 times y, and then equals 5. So 2 times 0 is 0, so I'm going to just have 5x equals 5. So then I divide both sides by 5, and I get x is equal to 1. So the x-intercept is the ordered pair 1, 0. Then we are looking for the y-intercept, and that was where x is equal to 0. So I have 5 times x, so now this is going to be 5 times 0, and plus 2y equals 5. So 5 times 0 is 0, so all I'm left with is 2y equals 5. So now I'm solving for y, so I need to divide both sides by 2. So I get y is equal to 5 halves.
Okay.
So ordered pair is going to be 0, 5 halves. And so that's my y-intercept. I'm going to bring up Desmos again, so we can check our work. So I'm going to make a table, and I'm just going to put in my intercepts on the table. I'm going to put in 1, 0, and then 0, and then I can do 5 divided by 2, and that will create a fraction. So I just hit the forward slash button, and that will get your division there. And then I'm going to enter in our equation, which was 5x plus 2y equals 5. And so it's going through those 2 points, and those 2 points that we found, if I turn off my graph, you can see those are on our axes. So our y-intercept is 5 halves, so that was here. The x-intercept was x equals 1, and you can see that's on the x-axis. And so then if you graph, you can see that's where the graph is going through our xy axes. And so then you can also double check that it's actually going through those 2 points to make sure you didn't make any mistakes.
Okay.
Now, horizontal and vertical lines. So horizontal lines and vertical lines have special forms. They don't have both x and y. They have only one variable in them. So a horizontal line only has a y in it. So it's usually y equals some number. And it has no x-intercept because it's going straight horizontal. So it's not going to cross the x-axis unless it's equal to the x-axis, unless it's y equals 0, which is a special case. Vertical lines, those are x equals and then a number. So these only have one variable in it, either an x or a y. So the vertical line is x equals some number, and it will never cross the y-axis unless it's on x equals 0, because then it is the y-axis. So that's a special case. So here, graphing horizontal and vertical lines. So we have x equals -2. So if it's x equals, this is going to be vertical. So what we do is we go to -2 on the x-axis, and then everywhere x is equal to -2 would be straight up and straight down. So you're just drawing a vertical line. And so anything, if you have x equals a number as your equation, there's no y, you get a vertical line. Now, y4, that, if it's a y, that gives us a horizontal line. So I go to 4 on our y-axis, and then everywhere y is 4 is along this line. So you can see,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to draw in a straight line, but everywhere on there, y is equal to 4. So that gives us our horizontal line.
Okay.
So horizontal and vertical lines, those are when you're given an equation from the very beginning that has only one variable. It's not after you plug something in. It's always the very first equation you're given before you've done anything is only something with x or only something with y.
Okay.
So that is it. That is 3.2.
Okay.
So do you have any questions for me?
No, I'm gonna figure this out.
Okay.
You explained it pretty well, and I think I'll do okay on it.
Okay. I'm going to actually just go to Desmos to show these vertical and horizontal lines too.
Okay.
So x equals -2, if you just type that in, it will give a horizontal or a vertical line there. So you can double check. And then we had y equals 4. And so you can see that also gives you your, so you can double check that you've graphed those as well by to Desmos.
I like that.
Yeah. Desmos is great for checking your work when you're doing graphing, and when you, if you have to go on to college algebra, I think about half of our students do, they're going to be doing a lot of graphing. So that's why I introduced it here, because it's going to be used a lot in college algebra.
That's good, because I'm going to have it. So, all right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And if you do end up with any questions, or if you're working on the assignment and you're like, oh, what do we have to do here again? Just send me an email or give me a call and I can help.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
You are welcome.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.